All right, Syrenne, if you could introduce the segment real quick. I need to get some water.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So this segment is called, what did I call it? I'm on top of things. This segment is called Production Horror Stories Tell in the Dark. It's basically just my production hell segment, which is not my hell segment. My hell segment is Jeopardy. But so, for those who don't know what I do outside of shit disturb on Twitter and RFN, I'm a producer in the video game industry, and the thing that producers do when multiple producers get in a room is they talk about when things go wrong. That is inevitably what happens when two producers talk. It's just production horror stories. What the hell? This is a nightmare. I need to tell you about this shit. Oh my god, you won't believe it. And then trying to one-up each other. And so I figured that it would be a fun/funny experience to record an hour of just talking about production stories and production hell and talking about where things go wrong and what that looks like. This had been on the schedule for weeks. And then this Metroid Prime 4 thing happens. We're obviously not going to talk specifically to Metroid Prime 4. It's just very indicative of what can happen when things go wrong. Also, there's a lot of people chatting in this Skype chat, and it's a little distracting. But okay. Technology. James is still getting water, so I'm going to keep stalling. Okay.
Oh, no, I'm back.
Okay.
I had to go to the kitchen. It's not that close.
No, I understand. Okay. So, production hell. So, James told me yesterday there's one that he specifically wants to touch on, so we should probably get to that one first, because that one might be a long one.
Yeah, so basically, there's the most obvious example of a game that went through absolute hell. Pun not intended. And that would be your Duke Nukem Forever, which is quite possibly the most appropriately named game in the history of the world. And yeah. That game's been talked about at length. As I was saying last night to Syrenne, there is an entire Wikipedia article just dealing with that game's development crisis.
Mm-hmm. That game was in development for 13 years.
Yes. With multiple significant reboots. And if it feels like, well, I mean, this was a game deep in a franchise's history that it's game 4 or 5 and they get stuck in this. No, this was actually the second 3D Duke Nukem game. This was only number 2, because there was the Duke Nukem Apogee game, which was a 2D side scroller, that they then went and made a 3D game on using some fairly early 3D shooter engine. Mm-hmm. And then nothing. Like the franchise was old. The more time was spent between those two entries in the franchise than the entire franchise history before it.
Yeah, and so that's indicative of a lot of things, of technology shifts and, like you said, a lack of clear vision as to what that thing looks like.
Yeah, so George Broussard, who was one of the two leaders out of the Apogee when it was founded, was overseeing this game's development and just didn't have a vision for where it was going to go. And so when you hear these big staff changes that came out with that game, you would hear George doesn't have a plan. That's not good. Yep. That's not the phrase you want. And so there was that, and then there was also this kind of weird technology fetishism that came with it.
This game has to be the best.
Right. One of the reasons Duke Nukem became popular and 3D Realms got to where it was is because when it came out, it was doing things that nobody else did. It was an achievement for what that game was at that moment in time. And the problem was, especially first-person shooters, were advancing at an incredibly aggressive rate at that point. There's not a big time gap between the original Duke Nukem and Quake 2.
Nope.
Like that's what you have to keep in mind. And those two games feel like they're decades apart, but really they're like years apart. Like I think it's like 4 years, like not much.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time the team making this game would go to E3 or go to an industry event, they would see where the technology had advanced. And as opposed to just saying, we're just going to finish this thing, because Mr. Broussard didn't have an end goal for what finishing this thing was, they would say, well, we have to get that. So this game went through like 3 or 4 distinct engines.
Yeah.
Many times heavily customized because of things they wanted to do the engine wasn't built for.
And yeah, just fully rebooted. And for those who don't know the end of this story, 3D Realms went under and was acquired, and all of the software and development in progress was acquired by Gearbox.
Oh, God.
Who finished that game, quote unquote, finished that game. Well, they put it out on a disc.
Yeah, it was released.
Which is something that 3D Realms was not capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, this is an accomplishment.
Yes.
But what you would see when they would have these big transitions is they'd bring people in and they'd go, actually, this game has more to it in terms of like, is it almost done than I thought. Like they're reading through the history on it. There's 3 distinct instances where someone is brought in thinking they're coming in to salvage a disaster. And they're like, well, actually, this isn't that far from being finished. At least doesn't feel that far from being finished.
Yeah.
And then because there's no vision to get out, there's no end state for this game, or because the eyes went somewhere else, the meme of the guy turning his head as he's walking with his girlfriend, like that would click. And it was like, oh, well, we need to change engines because they've added multiplayer to this version of the engine. I think it was Unreal was the one that they changed. They changed to Unreal because the Quake 2 engine, which they also changed to, couldn't do the wide open spaces of the Nevada desert, which is a level they wanted to make. There was a level they wanted to make, and the engine didn't support it.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 years they spent on that engine modifying it, trying to make it work, they then just dumped that when Unreal came around, which could support it. Okay, or maybe just don't do the level that way is a thought. But then they changed Quake engine versions again because the Quake engine had multiplayer added to it, but they didn't have a clear vision for what they wanted multiplayer to be. So they didn't have a plan for multiplayer, but they went to a version that had multiplayer just cause. It's like,
yeah, and then real quick, Carmine. First, 2 things from Carmine. First is that Carmine asked if this is technically feature creep or if there's another term for this. This is beyond feature creep.
I mean, feature creep is in there. Like the multiplayer stuff is feature creep. Yeah. Trying to add a big open space to the Quake engine that doesn't support it is feature creep.
Yes.
But there's also a weird sense of like it's just aimlessness.
Yeah. Real quick though, the other thing from Carmine is that the hour 2 giveaway keyword is boo, BOO.
Nice.
So go ahead and enter that on the NintendoWorldReport.com charity live stream page. Get your entries in. BOO. I do not know if proper casing is
it's probably
required, but you're probably good.
You hear, and the thing about this one that makes it so interesting, which is why I kind of want to make sure we touched on it, is that all of these things happen in other games. Like there are other games that have had development problems. Like nothing here in and of itself taken individually is that insane. Games change engines all the time because the engine they're trying to use became antiquated or because it just couldn't meet the vision they wanted.
Absolutely. Like it's not none of these are individually unheard of.
Right. Games get started without a clear vision for what the end state of the game is. Now that's dangerous, and that happens in general software as well. Like I've lived that experience where there's a sense beyond feature creep of just like, well, we want something that broadly works in this space, and then what the parameters of, like, we want to build a house in this feature zone, but we don't know where the bathroom is going to go. That's fine, but if it's a question of we don't know if it's going to have bathrooms, that's like, oh, okay, yes. Well. Is the building going to be one giant house-sized bathroom? I don't know what you're going for here. where you can just kind of go in and start building what you can and then hope it all comes together in the end. That almost never works.
No, it's the thing about production on games is you need a clear map. You need a clear vision of where this goes and what the exact or almost exact work required to get there is, and what order and what the dependencies are. And like, I'm not going to get super deep into like Gantt charts here, but like, welcome to my day to day. But yeah, it's not like you need to be able to have that vision, and to not even begin to have that vision is fascinating. Another production hell, courtesy of noted medieval times fans at Gearbox, is
so the thing about Randy is that Randy is always like, we're never going to escape Randy Pitchford. This is a forever now. Like, he's just like, if you go back to shit like Samba de Amigo, like, it's never gonna stop.
No,
like, people talk about like Valve 76 just keeps on going. No, you don't even understand. Like, Fallout 76, whatever, it's a mess. Oh, I said Valve. Fallout 76 is a mess,
yes.
And it just keeps giving us comedy. But like, holy shit, like, we're at like a decade now of this.
So yes, anyways, where I was going with that was Alien Colonial Marines.
Jesus Christ.
Everyone's favorite Wii U game.
The game that was accused of being an act of fraud. Like, I mean, there's some fucked up shit with that game that we will never hear because all the parties involved agreed not to talk about it.
But I will say that if you believe Gearbox's side of the story,
which you shouldn't,
what they claim happened is an unbelievable case of production hell, to the point where they couldn't salvage it without massive external help, without permission from their publisher.
Well, what did they do instead?
No, they got other companies to come in and help finish the thing. But Sega didn't know is what I believe is what their official story is.
Why would you not tell Sega, hey, we're bringing in help?
Remember, everyone, that if you're wondering why their official story doesn't make them look good, it's because Sega's story is, you stole money from us to make Borderlands.
Yes. Yeah, so, like their story falls apart when you say, like, okay, you need to bring in help because the game was going poorly. That sucks. Okay, but it happens. Like, it happens all the time. So, like, I'm on a software project right now where we looked at the scope of work, looked at our timeline, and said, can't do it. And so the answer was, well, write a goddamn check, get some bodies out here to help us make it happen. The question would be, if you're Sega, who at the time, let's point out, at the time Sega would talk, when they said, what are our big franchises? It was Sonic, Total War, and Aliens.
Yep, they said those are the core franchises they're going to continue on.
Football Manager.
Yeah, and Football Manager, yep.
And so this is one of their four, like, first off, that's a nightmare list of franchises as your four key franchises. But you would think if the person making your current franchise game came to you and said, hey, we have a problem. Things aren't working out the way we want them to. Can you help us? Or we're going to pursue help. The answer would be, we're disappointed, but okay. Not, wait, why did you hide this from us?
Yes.
But beyond that, they still made frickin' Borderlands 2.
Uh-huh.
Like, why wouldn't you pause development on that project? Why did you pick up frickin' Duke Nukem Forever? There is this weird, like, there's the term on all of your nonsense astrology where they talk about, like, planets coming into alignment with stars and having this, like, effect on people. There is a weird sense of, like, Gearbox for this one moment was this beautiful, like, alignment of Duke Nukem Forever, Alien Colonial Marines, and Borderlands 2. That had all just sort of fallen into this beautiful alignment.
And Borderlands, the pre-sequel, which 2K Australia made with supervision from Gearbox.
Yes. It's like this weird everybody transformed into werewolves because these planets came into alignment. It's it speaks to the importance of the individuals who are in charge. When you see like that kind of planetary alignment happen, you're like, hey, there's something bad over there.
That's a messed up portfolio.
Something really bad is happening right over there, and we need to not be near it.
So, people in chat have been mentioning a lot Final Fantasy 14. I love that. I love that as I was saying Final Fantasy, you probably didn't know which one I was going to go with.
No, I was thinking about like, okay, is it going to be 13 verses? Is it going to be 14? Is it going to be all the other 13s?
Yeah, it's going to be 13, 15, 14, or 15. But no.
Yeah, the answer is all of them.
Yes, but specifically...
or 7. It could have been 7. Remake.
14 is an interesting... Oh, God, it's a remake. 14 is an interesting case study because it's not a traditional production hell. They put that thing out on schedule 1.0. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But they put it out on schedule, and then they had to pull it all down and bring it back up.
So that was more an issue of you have a basic idea of what you want, and you just kind of let it happen. Like you hire people. It's sort of the opposite of like we have to hire these people in stealth to finish our game. That game was outsourced, broadly speaking, in China. And Square Enix obviously was not keeping a close eye on it. And one of the things that I've dealt with in offshore development is that it is imperative that you have this kind of consistent eye on the ball because you're dealing with time zone shifts. Now, granted, Square Enix is dealing with a much less significant time zone shift than I'm usually dealing with. I'm usually dealing with Chennai. So that's like 14 and a half hours. So like I might catch them at the very end of their workday and the very beginning of mine. But neither of us are really in any condition to have any kind of significant conversation. But still, when it's happening at proximity or at non-proximity, you have to kind of keep this consistent, like, what's happening in the studio right now? What are you doing? What's going on? And we know they didn't keep an eye on it because the goddamn chocobos were called horsebirds.
Yep.
Which like, that should have been something that a minder caught the first time it happened and said, whoa, no, fix that, please. That needs to be fixed. This is wrong.
Yeah, you need to. So I recommend anyone go watch. NoClip did a 3-part documentary on the story of FF14 because that is just like going to the CEO of Square Enix and being like, talk.
Right.
Just like what happened, and their candor now that they fixed it is actually impressive. But
I think they kind of had to though. Like when it happened, like they came out immediately and said, "Yo, we messed up."
Yeah.
What's amazing to me though is
they were paying people to play that thing.
Yeah, I do.
When they took all the subscriptions away and started giving away premium currency to anyone who signed on.
What's weird is they released it. Like that's what I don't understand. Like I guess because they numbered it and they wanted to release 15. And they thought 15 might be coming out soon, and little did they know. But like,
they announced 13 and 14 on the same day.
Yes, and 13 verses.
Yes, and would ended up becoming 15. And funny that we haven't seen a 16 announcement.
Yeah, because I think maybe someone finally learned the lesson of, hey, let's not announce 3 games at one time, years in advance. That's not going to go great. But yeah, I think being open about it though, like they took their eye off the ball, things got completely out of hand. I think being open about it as it happened saved that game. Now, granted, they saved that game by also throwing money at it and saying we're willing to lose money on this thing.
Yes,
but Final Fantasy 14 right now is regarded as probably the best maintained MMO that's out there.
Yeah, it's the one that has the most consistently happy fan base. Old Republic is well received, but it doesn't get a lot of new content. And World of Warcraft has good years and bad years. But
14 is consistently putting new story content out.
Yeah.
Like right now, the only blowback that game gets is like for a while there, the real estate market in that game had been overblown because of the number of people in it and also speculators.
Which that's just capitalism.
Which just tells you at least the game is healthy enough that could happen.
Yes.
Versus where it was before, it was like,
Plexioshi, I'm not going to repeat that, but that's not a high bar. So here's a fun one for you. So Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't have production hell. It had hundreds and hundreds of outsourced artists, like at multiple different countries and multiple different time zones. Just all, like, the sun never set almost on Kingdom Hearts 3 development just because they needed to get those fucking art assets done.
Right. Which we talked about the difficulty of maintaining that, but there's also the sense of, like, could you have constrained your ambition to not have to need this?
No, I mean, I'm a little surprised because seemingly the holdup was the writing, not the art. So, and that's
the
just
grand writing of Kingdom Hearts.
That's just auteur theory where Nomura wrote every single line of dialogue and text and item description in all of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Nomura was convinced there was a doppelganger of himself from the future writing dialogue too.
That's just auteur theory, and like that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I mean that's the situation of you can't have your writer, director, producer be the same person. You need somebody going like, no, fucking finish it. God damn.
So here's a anonymized production story. I have a few of these.
Okay.
It's a real story, but I cannot say what game this was, and I will not be able to confirm any guesses.
Okay. Do I know this story?
Maybe. Okay. So you probably know. I think I've told you parts of it. So you'll know what game it is. So a game that released in the last 5 years, and major publisher goes to a fairly well-known small to mid-sized developer and says, basically, is looking for game dev for hire, like a contract for hire work. Just like, hey, frequently what happens in the industry is small developers will pitch publishers, but this was publisher going to a developer and saying like, hey, can you make this for us?
We have an idea.
Yes. They have an idea. And developer accepted. They start building the game. It's not coming together well enough. So the producer gets an idea that they're going to change the genre of game a year and a half into development to paper over some of the difficulties.
Uh-oh.
They do this. And as this is happening, there is a combat system in this game. And the developer has spent years working on this combat system. Producer comes in 8 months before ship and says, oh, actually, I probably should have just told you this up front. I just want Yakuza. It's like, you should have just made that.
Oh, okay.
Can you restart?
Can you make Yakuza?
Can you make Yakuza in 8 months? By the way, this developer, not RGG Studios, the developers of Yakuza.
Because they would have been like, hey, we want to hire you to make this racing game, and they'd have been like, we made a Yakuza by accident. We're sorry.
Yeah.
Go,
no.
Damn it. All right.
That is a fucking real hell story. Oh, here's another. Oh, by the way, my HVAC system is on now. I apologize.
That's fine. I can barely hear it. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
So, this story happened around the turn of the console generation into this console generation. So this was not a game. Yeah, this was from the last 5 years. It was on a launch game.
It's Zoo Tycoon, isn't it?
No, Zoo Tycoon was a launch game.
It explains why they had to spray the bear for so much. Just core content to the game.
So this game was always targeting PS4, Xbox One, and it had a 3.5-year dev cycle, which means that they were working on Xbox One and PS4 way before they knew what the specs were. They get final dev kits about a year before the system's launch, maybe 9 months before the system launch, and they have to pull everyone off of like creative design and basically almost like anyone except for like narrative and audio, just like off of their respective teams to fucking scramble to get this thing optimized.
Two fairly significantly different systems as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. To get them
the power difference between the Xbox One base and the PS4 is fairly significant.
Yes. But like getting it optimized, like getting the API calls, like understanding the workflow of these new systems. I don't want to get too technical, but like getting it good for these two systems and PC to the point where by the time they were able to go back to their other work, they had about 5 months left to make a game or to finish the actual game.
This one I don't know, but I have a guess. I won't say it because you can't confirm it.
If you want to type the guess into Skype chat, I can confirm or deny for you. But it's or I'll just type it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nope. Okay. Yep. No,
guess?
that was where I went. Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
I was gonna put the name of the publisher in there, but okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That's pretty obvious. But that one's probably easier to guess than the first one, but I still can't confirm or deny publicly. That's still a private story. Here's one. Oh fuck, here's one. God damn. Okay. Indie team that's been making a game for 5 years without a producer brings a producer on. Producer in interview asks, "So what's been taking you so long? Like, what are the road bumps?" They give an explanation of like, "Hey, like there was a patch of time here where we weren't really able to talk that much, or like, we're not able to like work too much because like, we all had day jobs. There's this period of time over here where like we change like a year in, we decided to change the look of the game. We probably shouldn't have done that, but it looks better now. Like all this stuff. It's like, okay, this seems tangible. It's like, when do you think you're ready? Like, without me having, or without producer having taken, this was not me. This is not me.
Okay.
But
okay.
As the perspective of the producer, this is not one of the games that I worked on. Though sometimes it feels like it. Producer basically says, "So without letting me take a look at where you're at, how long do you think it's going to be before you ship?" And I'm like, "I don't know. We're probably 9 months to a year out." It's like, okay, that's a good time to bring in a producer and salvage this thing. Producer comes in, they're like 3 years away.
So what
they're
was the
not
whole
even
here?
close.
So what did the producer see that told them that like, oh no, this estimate is just wrong?
They were making about 3 assets a week for this very large scale 3D game.
So it was a pace issue more than anything.
It was a pace, like they just couldn't get, and they refused to scope down, no matter what the producer said.
And so what was impacting their pace? Was it the fact that they're also doing like this is a side job, or was it?
Yeah, it was that. It was just team size, and it was availability of team. Just having all of these things compounding, like real life and all that stuff. But like producer gets hired on under one expectation, and it is nothing like that. And producer basically says, yeah, if you hire on maybe 5 extra people, we could get this done in a year and a half. Team size before the producer was about 4 people.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, team of 4 people for a very, very large scope 3D game. Like, the idea for the game was it was going to be like 11 to 12 hours long.
Okay.
Anyways, that's a production horror story from a friend of mine.
What was the outcome here? Like, how did they deal with it?
I can't say that one because that'll give it away.
Oh,
but it was not a positive outcome.
I see.
Yes, so that's a fun one that makes my blood boil just a little bit. There's God, I have so many production horror stories in my head. I'm just trying to pick. We could talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake for a hot minute. What the fuck are you doing, making your director the same director as Kingdom Hearts 3, a game that had entered development in 2012. Kingdom Hearts 3 entered development in 2012, publicly announced in 2013. 2 years in, after announcement, they announced that he's working on another project at the same time.
Another big project.
Big project.
So let's talk about like the role of having this kind of single point of failure here, like to actually get into like with a project like this, how this could be a problem. So I've been in a role where I'm leading on 2 distinct projects, and I've got 4 devs on one, 2 devs on the other, and that's a fairly small team. But in a small team like that, your responsibilities are incredibly like distinct. Like it's not a matter of like, oh, you need to broadly make sure things are moving. It's like, no, you need to make sure individual A has delivered piece of functionality 1 by date X. Like it's really hyper specific. Like I'm going to go sit there and I'm going to look at what they have built, and I'm going to go to them and go, what the hell is this? This is supposed to be this thing. Or, oh, this is really good. Let me make sure that the thing, you need something right now and it's holding you up. Let me make sure we have it. Or let me see why we don't have it. That's like a very specific amount of tasks that is incredibly difficult to pull off on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. But if you have 2 things you're trying to keep track of in your head, even if it's just a matter of like, I've got a punch list of 12 items I need to get done today. Yep. And they represent 2 distinct like flow lines of like, these are dealing with thing A, these are dealing with thing B. It can be difficult in your head to reprioritize the items in question because you don't have a clear overall vision of these things are all going to one place. So I can say, well, I can't do all these things today. I can't solve all of these problems today. But so which one is causing the most impediment? Because the answer then becomes, well, this one is absolutely critical to the forward momentum of Project 1, but Project 2 has more people stuck. Maybe they can work around it, but there's 5 of them, there's 2 here, or hey, there's a $1 billion game here and there's a $500 million game here. In this case, like how do I reprioritize my work?
On fucking top of that, don't forget the Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't a single game.
Right.
It's an episodic release of multiple parts. At least for
now, who knows? Who knows what that thing might end up being?
As of the last time they were talking about it. I will say that for whatever degree you believe Tetsuya Nomura when he opens his mouth, what he said a couple months ago is that the game was further along than he had expected, and that he would be willing to talk. He would be excited to talk about it once the PR cycle for Kingdom Hearts 3 was over.
And that doesn't even make sense. Like, there should be no scenario in which the producer of the game is further along than they expected.
Oh, he's not the producer. He's the director and the writer and the character designer and the costume designer and the scenario designer and...
Yeah, like, it should be on exactly where he expects it to be.
It's a lot.
He should not be surprised by anything. Because he should have maximum. No, that's not true. Because you can be surprised by the speed at which the team is putting things together, for bad or good.
Yes.
Like you could be like, oh wow, they've really been kicking ass, or like, wow, I really need to kick their ass.
I think that's more where he was going.
But like, you shouldn't say it.
So here's the other thing about Nomura. Here's a fucking third production hell story about Nomura right here. So this is just going to be a mini rant on my part. I'm going to try and keep this short. So James knows this. There's a Kingdom Hearts mobile game. Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. Kingdom Hearts Union Cross has a story that it gets updated every month. Actually, there are 2 production hell stories about this. That whole game is production hell. It has a live story that ties in critically to Kingdom Hearts 3 and other games. Nomura is the lore keeper of Kingdom Hearts. But he was busy making Kingdom Hearts 3, so the game just fucking went like 8 months without a story update. Because they didn't know what the story was, because he would refuse to delegate anything.
Yeah. And this is, again, something I've been guilty of on a project of like, I know everything there is to know about this ecosystem. I understand how to make it work. I understand all its dumb foibles. I know why it breaks. I know why it works. I know why it's performing super well one day and super shitty the next. I can get 3 lines of explanation as to what the current symptoms are and tell you the solution and walk out of the room knowing I got it right. But you cannot concentrate that kind of power. Because, let's say, for example, you get hit by a bus.
Yeah, what happens if Nomura needs to be in the hospital for a bit?
What if he's just... he's eventually going to pass on. Like, at that point, like, how do you handle this? How do you manage that? What if the unforeseen happens? What if he has to go deal with a family member? You cannot centralize power like this. And this is something that type A's are usually super guilty of, but it's also weirdly something introverts can become guilty of. Which usually if it's a type A personality thing, type A's are super domineering and they need to go all the time. Usually type A is an introversion, although those two aren't necessarily diametrically opposed. Usually speaking, like main character flaws for type A's and main character flaws for people who are introverted don't tend to overlap super cleanly. Like it'll be like they go one way, then what my flaws are completely different than that. This is a situation where type A's think they can handle everything and then everybody just needs to fucking get out of their way and let them do their shit. An introvert just doesn't want to take the time to sit there and really explain how these things need to be handled and then say, I know I'm going to have to talk to you all the time. Because by not handing over the reins, they don't have to talk to you. And so there's that weird sense of like, for different reasons, I need to control everything. And as an introvert, although I've done 500 episodes of a podcast, there is a sense of like, if I don't hand off the reins, I don't have to worry about it. But that's not true. What happens, and you have to kind of condition your brain to this, is they're going to come bother you anyway because shit's gone wrong and nobody can fix it. Or nobody knows how to...
the one or two.
Right. You are the only person who can fix this problem. And there's no reason for that. There's no reason why Nomura has to be the only person who knows, no, actually, fucking Keyblades, everybody can get a Keyblade, but somebody has to give it to you first.
You're not wrong. How do you know? How did you actually get that right? Holy shit.
He could just write it down. That's all it takes. He just has to write it down. And then everybody knows the answer to that question. Hey, can you just get a Keyblade? No. Someone has to hand it to you. Got it. Understood.
Or you can accidentally touch someone else's and accidentally get it bequeathed to you anyways. They just get stupider.
That sounds like
stupider.
The start of some kind of weird slash fiction, and I'm not okay with it.
That's not slash fiction. That's Kyrie and Birth by Sleep. But
like, there's a way to handle that. And so if you put too much on one person,
yeah.
And let's be clear, this when it gets that bad as it is for Nomura, this is a personal failing. This is no longer his management saying, no, you need to guide this, because obviously if you have that kind of control, you could push back and go like, nah, we need to split this up. The fact that he hasn't is a representation of the fact that he doesn't want to. And that means he's basically held the entire rest of his production.
After Final Fantasy VII, like when the Nomura era actually like kicked off, like he seemed really reticent at first. If you go back and read interviews at the time, he was just like, I don't want this kind of power, and I think then he got drunk on it.
And that's the thing. It can become very intoxicating to be the lead position on a dev role and say like, no, this is how we're going to do it. Because here's the thing: if you get creative types, or if you get software developers, and this is the one place where they really overlap. In a room, everyone has a goddamn vision for how to solve this problem, and their vision is the best vision, and they will not be swayed. And having the ability to just go, no, this is how we're doing it. Like, if you've lived your whole life going through these stupid, meaningless, long-ass fights that ultimately have no significant impact, being able to just end one by fiat it's intoxicating.
Yes. And also, side note on Kingdom Hearts' story, you can blame Sakaguchi for that, because Nomura's first directing job was the original Kingdom Hearts in 2002, and he made it a really, really, really simple Save the Princess story, and Sakaguchi was like, actually, Final Fantasy fans don't want a simple story. So, here you go.
So right now the chat's freaking out about the fact that Zelda doesn't have any kind of effective lore keeping. But in the end, I think that's actually a strength for the franchise, because they've just said, who the fuck cares?
Yep.
We can make whatever we want to make. Like, if every Kingdom Hearts game was effectively able to just be made, we would have had Kingdom Hearts 3 a long ass time ago.
Yeah, probably, almost certainly. Well, there are other. Nomura refusing to make Kingdom Hearts 3 unless he got to include Toy Story is a story. Holding the game literally hostage until Pixar played ball.
But like, they would not be in this circumstance if it was like, hey, this Kingdom Hearts game doesn't need to worry about the 400 distinct Soras that have been brought into the multiverse. They could just say, nah,
that's not right.
They could just say, nah, new characters, whatever, fuck it, let's go, new game.
Just give me new characters in Kingdom Hearts. Anyways, but
what if the new characters they gave you were also Sora?
I mean, I've literally had that happen before with Birth by Sleep. Thank you very much. Where they promised me the characters were going to be new, and one of them became Sora, and one of them looked exactly like Sora with black hair.
What if it looked exactly like Sora but wasn't Sora, and then another character who looked nothing like Sora was Sora?
That's literally what happened.
What if it turns out at the end of the game you were Sora all along?
That's literally what happens in Birth by Sleep.
I don't mean you, the main character. I mean like Baten Kaitos, where you, the player, is actually like a fairy that only the main character can see. What if at the end they turn the camera at you and the main character looks you in the eyes and goes, "You're me all along," and then you have to drop it and walk away forever?
Fair. Sorry, but we have 15 minutes left in this segment. Isn't Syrenne explains the Kingdom Hearts plot?
It can't be done in 15 minutes.
Yes, it can. I can explain the Kingdom Hearts plot in the next 15 minutes if we really just want to fucking be done with production hell. But that is not what people, I would say, paid for. But this segment was always free. You were always going to get my suffering. Chat's claiming we don't want 731 Pokemon, but I say, what if there were 1,000? Look, there's only one best Pokemon, so. Yoshi apparently does not want the Kingdom Hearts. I think they're getting to that. What if we add an evolution of Ditto? What's that develop into? Also Ditto. Fuck off. Get out of here. Ditto 2. That's coming. There will be a day where we're having a conversation about a Pokemon production hell because there's too many Pokemon. They don't know what the fuck to do. I mean, literally, you want to know why Sun and Moon doesn't have all of the Pokemon in them. It's because it says, fuck it. They have all the models, but like the Pokedex just cuts hundreds out. Shy Guy we opened with Prime 4. Yeah. Did we? Did we actually deal with that directly? Oh, we talked about it. I mean, yeah. The issue is, it's Prime 4 is weird because it's a lot of the stuff we've touched on come into play. They've even said it themselves. Like, there's just so much going on. There's too many. They have the opposite problem of like it's being managed broadly, and that's hard. That's really difficult. Yes. No, you need someone who's responsible. So to take it back from like the hey, you have to give up control. Someone has to be responsible, but that's someone has to be the person who gets yelled at, not someone has to be the person who makes every decision. Yes. The thing about Prime 4 is yes, we are. We are mostly not talking about it, mostly because it's just like there's reporting about what happened there, but it's a little soon. Maybe for the next.
That story will get told.
Yes, that story will get told. It would be inappropriate to share what I know, so keeping that one close to the chest for now. Let's try. Here's a production hell story for you: Super Smash Brothers Brawl. Sakurai, wait, who's making that game? I thought you were.
Yeah, that's a well, yeah, of course he'll make it if we ask him. Okay, what are we gonna ask him? I don't know.
After we announce it?
Which I mean, there was always going to be a Smash Brothers on Wii. Like that was like the fact that it was announced should not have been a surprise to anybody. The fact that Iwata's up there going like, and it's gonna have online play. Okay, sure, yeah, great. The game doesn't exist.
Yes.
So while I agree, any Smash Brothers game that came out in what was that, 2006? Somewhere in that neighborhood. It was gonna have online play. Saying it like you've got online play fucking going and you don't have a producer is a mess.
Yes. No, that was maybe one of the funniest stories to come out of an E3.
I mean, there is a possibility on that one though, where that's not actually production hell and that's actually production genius, which is legitimately Nintendo's not sure he would say yes unless they put that weird gun to his head situation.
Yes. All right, James.
Announced it. We didn't tell you. Here it is.
Yes. 2 minutes on the clock. I'm going to say something I regret if I open my mouth on this one, but chat has been demanding all hour that we talk about Too Human.
Too Human. Whoa, God!
So I'm going to say something I fucking regret if I open my mouth. So 2 minutes, go.
Silicon Knights. Holy shit. So here's the thing with Too Human. Too Human is kind of like a weird microcosm of Duke Nukem Forever because ultimately they've gone through all kinds of technology shifts, they've shifted platforms, and they didn't have a clear vision for where they wanted to go. All they knew was that they wanted to make some gigantic fucking space opera and didn't entirely understand what that would entail. They jumped from publisher to publisher who was willing to throw money at them because of reasons I don't entirely understand. What they did to earn this kind of faith. And they just continually tried to percolate on ideas they had developed, but ultimately had not put inside the context of a full game. Ultimately, Too Human, the game, the singular game, not the branching multi-part legacy, is fine. It's fine. And it ultimately, if it had come out and no one had heard of Too Human back during the fucking PlayStation era, people would have probably remembered Too Human as one of those games that comes up every so often for like, man, we should have that on backwards compatibility. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. Instead, it is a game that transitioned to all three platform holders at some point, moved between three distinct platforms, and ultimately probably 3 or 4 different engines. Beyond that, the individuals involved failed to talk to their lawyers before they had conversations about what they can and cannot say in public, and also about whether or not they should fucking pay Epic for their engine. So it's really a situation of, honestly, hubris. There were individuals who thought they're going to be the ones to deliver this multi-part epic that will change video gaming as a whole, that thought that the technology will catch up to them, and thought that they are the ones who can marshal all the resources and ideas in place to make it happen. This is not particularly surprising with the individuals involved, although Johnny's probably shaking his head vigorously right now. He does not agree with my position.
All right, time.
Yes.
I'm going to say something I regret if I let you go on, if I open my mouth. So
I will say one thing. There's a reason that company is where it is right now. And it was bad decisions, not because of the individuals, but like fucking pay people for their engine. Goddamn.
Matt, yes, Too Human is the one that got sued by is the game that got sued by Epic.
Sure did.
And court order to have a full product recall on Too Human and X-Men Destiny.
Oh God, I forgot about X-Men Destiny. Jesus Christ.
X-Men Destiny is the only game I ever gave a 0 out of 10 to. I had to argue with my editor for weeks that 0 was allowed.
Hey Neil, if you're listening, is X-Men Destiny the one that we got people on their Facebook told to come yell at us?
That
One of those
is,
X-Men games we were trolled.
I think it was
Facebook.
that. That gave us some hot fucking shit. Oh, holy shit. I don't even think the Wii version of that game is beatable. It's so... Anyways.
By the way, as an aside, I have played Too Human. It's fine.
Yeah. Now I'm just trying to think. But Johnny, I did not even piece it together when I gave it a 0. That thing is barely a video game.
Barely a video game. Also known as your Kingdom Hearts VR experience. This is barely a product. This is barely a thing. What if you put out? What's wrong with you?
Everything in that experience is a splash screen for patches that are incoming.
Well, so I think that goes back to the statement of like we have this big thing we need to push on every front. You don't. If you're trying to, John Lindemann and I have this like weird fetish for the phrase transmedia property.
Yes.
But transmedia property also means like you've got to be fucking on the goddamn ball. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at you, level 5. I'm gonna set Factor 5. And what was that? Food Wars, whatever that stupid thing was called.
Snack Wars, Treasure Hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing didn't really take off. Imagine that.
It's just too much. Like there's too much involved. Like it's hard to manage all these kind of competing fronts for which you have to put things together. And so it's tough. Like even if you have a great idea, it's still tough.
Yes. I will take this moment and remind everyone in chat that the giveaway word for this segment, which closes in 5 minutes, is boo, B-O-O. I will also plug a few things. So this was not my health segment. I know we started talking about Kingdom Hearts. This was not my health segment. My health segment is at 5 p.m. Eastern, where I will be running a game of Jeopardy, or co-running a game of Jeopardy with James, who will be my scorekeeper.
I'm saying don't put this evil on me. I'm just keeping score.
I wrote all the questions, and I edited all the questions to be easier.
There's only one where I sent a comment back like, "No, that's fucked. You can't. You can't."
And I made the change. But yeah, Neil, Greg, and John will be competing to see who knows the most useless Nintendo first-party trivia.
Remember, at the end of Final Jeopardy, if nobody has a positive score, they're given $100 each.
Yep. Also, I will say that John Lindemann tweeted me during this segment, and I thought it was going to be asking when our segment was, but it was that he bought a new Nintendo 3DS XL.
God damn it! Development disaster, John Lindemann, period. John, we talked about this last week. What are you going to do with it? I don't know.
I know, and that's why I sent him a link like 4 days ago of a massive refurbished 3DS sale at GameStop, and he bought a Samus one. Anyways, that's a lot. So, there, I'm glad.
All right, we got to wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. So, 3 minutes until the next segment. I don't know what this transition is going to be. I'm going to let John handle this. I'm not worrying about how I'm going to pass the baton off to Nintendo eShop games which I think is Don's segment. Yeah. Come back for Jeopardy.
Yep.
You can find me on Twitter at SyrenneMCN if you want to hear more of my bullshit, but also want to see pictures of Haru from Persona 5.
You can block those. I've done it. It's possible.
Don't.
Block retweets and put a filter in place for the word Haru, and you're good. You're safe.
Most of the Haru comes from Japanese, though, so.
Yeah, but I can actually write Haru in Japanese to put the filter in place.
Valid. You can just block the accounts I retweet from. Let's see here. There's. You can follow James at NWR_James on Twitter. Again, please come back for Jeopardy at 5. That's the thing I'm really, really, really super excited about. 5 Eastern. And I don't know. Please let me know what you thought of the segment. Bye-bye.
Cool. Bye, buddy.